exploring some new avenues. New ways to skin that. But Gene, thank you for all your assistance.
Are you ready? The subcommittee will come to order. The purpose of today's gathering is we have a markup on H.R. 4501, the Guarantee of a Legitimate Deal Act of 2009, H.R. 2480, the Truth in Fur Labeling Act of 2009, H.R. 5156, the Clean Energy Technology Manufacturing and Export Assistance Act of 2010, H.R. 1796, the Residential Carbon Monoxide Poisoning Prevention Act, and H.R. 4678, the Foreign Manufacturer Legal Accountability Act of 2010. Pursuant to the rules of the committee, the chairman and ranking member will have 5 minutes each for opening statements, and any other subcommittee member who wishes to make an opening statement will have 3 minutes. The chair now recognizes himself for an opening statement. I commend Ranking Member Whitfield, Congressman Anthony Weiner, Congressman Jim Moran, Congresswoman Doris Matsui, Congressman Jim Matheson, Congresswoman Betty Sutton, and Congresswoman Moto Mack for their leadership in resolving the important issues that these bills address. Several hearings have been held on all of these bills. All objections and all concerns have been raised and addressed, I might add. And the fruits of those efforts are reflected in the actions we're undertaking today. First, the Guarantee of a Legitimate Deal Act has a lofty title, and hopefully we can get there. But this act will protect consumers from unfair and or deceptive practices surrounding the selling and trading of precious metals by providing a professional definition of an online seller, maintaining that consumers give consent before their jewelry is melted or destroyed, and requiring those who engage in this business to maintain websites and to be properly insured. Second, the Truth in Fur Labeling Act will require all fur apparel to be labeled and permit states to apply more restrictive labeling standards. Third, the Clean Energy Technology Manufacturing and Export Assistance Act will help our manufacturing industry become more competitive. From environmental degradation and oil spills in the Delta of Niger, in the Gulf of Guinea, to the U.S. energy corridor in the Gulf of Mexico, now is the time for American business to step up to the plate to provide innovative technology solutions. This legislation has the potential to allow American businesses to assert their leadership in a sector that it once dominated. The manager's amendment will broaden the scope of the definition of clean energy technology to include coal and nuclear energy, and it clarifies that the fund is not a grant program. More importantly, the bill will ensure that our exports improve and increases domestic job creation and small business development. The next act, the fourth act, is the Residential Carbon Monoxide Poisoning Prevention Act, which will increase poisoning prevention through the adoption of mandatory consumer product safety standards. This legislation will make it lawful for any manufacturer or distributor to to import or distribute any newly assembled or unassembled residential carbon monoxide detector unless it complies with the new standard. Lastly, the Foreign Manufacturers Legal Accountability Act will allow insured American consumers to bring suit against foreign manufacturers of defective products in American courts. I really want to thank all the members of the subcommittee for their contributions in developing these important pieces of legislation. As I said at the beginning of the 111th Congress, my intention is to always work in a bipartisan manner. I am therefore pleased that these 5 bills have set aside our partisan differences. We reached common ground, and as a result, I think all of us can be proud of the fruits of our labor that we're adopting today on behalf of the best interests of the American people. My hope this morning is that we will continue that constructive bipartisan dialogue in this markup. We will deliver to the American people a bipartisan work product, pieces of legislation that will bear the mark of goodwill and good work. And I want to thank you again. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time. And now I recognize this fine fellow to my left, the ranking member, Mr. Whitfield.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much, and I certainly look forward to our markup of the 5 bills that you described this morning, and I certainly want to thank you and your staff for working with us to address some of the concerns that we had expressed. And there are a few minor issues that we look forward to continue discussing as we move toward the full committee. The Truth in Fur Labeling Act addresses the Federal Trade Commission's rule on fur labeling. As a co-sponsor of this legislation, I do believe it is essential that the Federal Trade Commission update the Fur Products Labeling Act of 1951 and the Fur Products Name Guide. I believe enhancing consumers' knowledge about fur through disclosure on labels is an important policy that permits consumers to make an informed choice about the products that they purchase. The Guarantee of a Legitimate Deal Act, which would bring consumer protections to businesses that pay cash for consumers' precious metals, is vitally important. I support this legislation because it does bring transparency to the cash for gold business and hold those businesses responsible for their actions. The Foreign Manufacturers Legal Accountability Act, which is intended to hold foreign manufacturers accountable in the U.S. If they sell products that are unsafe, is certainly a worthy goal. We all share that. We want to protect the American consumers. Having said that, I still have some concerns, not trying to be nitpicking, but we do think that there may be some duplicative requirements under existing regulations of federal agencies, and still the question of what, if any, impact or conflict will this have with the WTO. The 4th bill, the Clean Energy Technology Manufacture and Export Assistance Act, I want to thank you again, Chairman, and your staff for working with us to include in the definition of clean energy technology, carbon capture and sequestration, and as well as nuclear power. These are significant improvements to the legislation because these technologies should not be excluded from trade promotion. With that, I still believe that maybe our biggest obstacle to increasing our exports has to do with these trade agreements, and I think we need to move some more trade agreements for our country. And in addition, all of us are still concerned about the $75 million price tag, particularly at this time of unusual and high federal debt. The Carbon Monoxide Poisoning Prevention Act, we know that almost 200 people die every year due to unintentional carbon monoxide poisoning. And the main purpose of this legislation is to adopt a voluntary industry standard for all carbon monoxide detectors. This is a great idea, and we certainly support it. It is my understanding that the Consumer Protection Safety Commission does have a budget surplus of about $7.1 million, and since H.R. 1796 does provide some grant money, it would be nice if we could use some of that surplus funds for that. But once again, Mr. Chairman, we appreciate this markup. Look forward to working with you on all of these bills as we move to the full committee. And I certainly want to thank all of the primary sponsors of these 5 bills. Thank you.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Barrow, for 3 minutes. Chair thanks the gentleman. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Lala, for 3 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and Ranking Member Whitfield. Thanks again for holding this markup this morning on these 5 pieces of legislation. I feel each of these bills represent issues that should be looked at to protect the American consumer. However, at the same time, I do have concerns about the potential unintended consequences that some of the bills may have. It is important that the committee protect the American people. We need to do so in a manner that does not further expand the government by forcing more bureaucratic mandates on businesses and consumers, regulating every industry with broad jurisdiction, hindering economic growth, and harming our hardworking Americans from obtaining jobs. As we know, we're faced with a national debt of over $13 trillion and climbing every day. Legislation this body pushes through cannot continue to have hidden costs and tax increases on Americans and businesses that supply jobs. I do continue to hear from my constituents and businesses across the country that they feel that Congress is not listening to them. This Congress and the administration needs to exercise serious fiscal restraint and stop any excessive spending and out-of-control debt. This is no longer an issue just for our future, but for the future of our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. Again, as members of Congress, we need to make sure that these bills do not have any unintended consequences, impede on states' rights, federally mandate new programs, create more government bureaucracy, increase our national debt. Again, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to continue to work with the subcommittee on these pieces of legislation as they make their way through the committee process. And I thank you again for holding the markup this morning, and I yield back.
Recognizes the gentlelady from Ohio, Ms. Sutton, for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Rush, for holding today's markup on these very important pieces of legislation and for your leadership on all of these issues. The first bill, the Guarantee of a Legitimate Deal Act, will ensure that consumers are being treated fairly by the mail-in gold industry. The second bill, the Truth in Fur Labeling Act, ensures that labels will be present for all fur products and make it clear to consumers what kind of fur they are purchasing and choosing to wear. The third bill, the Clean Energy Technology Manufacturing and Export Assistance Act, will help support our manufacturers transition to clean energy products and sell these products. The fourth bill, the Residential Carbon Monoxide Poisoning Prevention Act, will require all manufacturers to meet widely accepted standards for carbon monoxide detectors. And the last bill before our subcommittee today is the Foreign Manufacturers Legal Accountability Act, a bill that I am proud to sponsor. It's a bipartisan bill with 62 co-sponsors. Every year, many Americans are injured, sometimes fatally, by dangerous products that have been manufactured abroad and imported into the United States. Recent examples include toxic drywall, faulty infant cribs, lead paint in children's toys, and defective tires. But these products not only hurt American consumers, they hurt American businesses. U.S. manufacturers are responsible for ensuring that the products they put on the market are safe, yet it is extremely difficult for injured parties to hold foreign manufacturers accountable because they are unable to serve process or establish jurisdiction. The Foreign Manufacturers Legal Accountability Act would require foreign manufacturers doing business in the United States to register an agent authorized to accept service of process on behalf of the manufacturer. This bipartisan bill will help protect American consumers and businesses from defective products manufactured abroad, and it would level the playing field for American manufacturers and provide U.S. consumers with the necessary tools to seek proper redress. I thank the chairman again for this markup and look forward to proceeding to pass these bills through committee and to the floor.
Mr. Pitts is recognized for 3 minutes.
I'll waive.
Mr. Green is recognized for 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for holding this markup on these important bills, and I support all the bills, and I want to bring attention to the one I original co-sponsor, H.R. 4678, introduced my colleague, Ms. Sutton. I have considerable concerns about the quality of our imports and disturbed by the recent significant increase in imported products that have been found to pose a risk to consumers and have resulted in recalls. In 2007, the Consumer Product Safety Commission recalled the highest number of products in 10 years. Of these recalls, 82% of them involved imported products. Of these recalled imported products, 74% originated in China. As a direct result of poor quality control by foreign manufacturers, primarily in China, our nation's consumers are placed in peril, and our federal regulatory agencies, such as the Consumer Product Safety Commission, must spend already scarce resources to protect us. While challenges remain to encourage our trading partners to implement stronger safety and quality standards, those affected by these dangers are left with little recourse in our court system. Victims have little ability to provide service or process aside from pursuing a costly and time-consuming method laid out in the Hague Convention on Service Abroad of judicial and extrajudicial documents. That's a mouthful just for anybody. And jurisdiction is difficult to establish in our courts. This bill fixes these shortcomings and provides a way to hold foreign manufacturers accountable. It accomplishes this by insisting that foreign manufacturers and producers that import products designate a registered agent who is authorized to accept service or process here. When an entity registers this agent, it's accepting the jurisdiction of the state and federal courts of the state in which the agent is located. If a federal manufacturer fails to designate a registered agent, the Act prohibits their products from being imported to the United States. It's important to note that this bill, as some critics have suggested, do not open the floodgates on litigation in this country between two foreign parties. As we scrutinize this legislation, we must put the interests of our constituents and the American people first. Dangerous products must be eliminated from our store shelves, and those responsible for exposing us to these dangers must be held accountable. And again, I want to thank Ms. Sutton for her leadership on this issue. And again, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your hard work on all these and so many other issues. And I yield back my time.
Chair, thanks the gentleman. Ms. Matsui is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for calling today's markup. In the interest of time, I plan to use my opening primarily to discuss H.R. 5616, legislation that I, along with Chairman Rush and Dingell and Congresswoman Eshoo, introduced to boost the competitiveness of the U.S. clean energy industry. Our nation is running a trade deficit in green technologies, ranging in the billions, and the U.S. clean tech industry is lagging behind many of its competitors in exports, including Germany and China. This is simply unacceptable. We must not become a nation dependent on foreign clean energy products. We must be the nation that leads the world in manufacturing and exporting clean energy technologies. H.R. 5156 will strengthen the U.S. clean tech industry. Specifically, the bill will require the Department of Commerce, in coordination with relevant agencies, to implement, develop, and sustain a national clean energy technology export strategy to provide U.S. clean tech firms with export assistance in finding and navigating foreign markets to sell their goods and services to new customers. The President has laid out a laudable goal to double U.S. exports over the next 5 years, and this legislation will ensure clean energy exports are at the forefront of our national export strategy. The bill would also strengthen America's domestic clean tech manufacturing industry. Unlike big U.S. companies, small and medium-sized firms simply do not have the resources and expertise to find and navigate foreign markets and are seeking assistance. In fact, according to the Trade Promotion Coordinating Committee, more than 30% of non-exporting small and medium-sized companies would export if they had more access to market information, export opportunities, and the export process. My home district of Sacramento is well positioned to become a national leader in manufacturing clean energy technologies, with more than 110 small and medium-sized clean energy companies in the region. Many of these companies have validated their clean energy technologies and are now looking to expand their businesses by exporting their goods and services to new foreign markets, but lack the resources to do so. H.R. 5156 will provide the assistance many U.S. small businesses are seeking. It will also enhance our standing in the race to be the global leader in clean energy. The BP oil spill only underscores the need for leadership in the clean energy market, and this bill will send a strong message that America is serious about being the leader in producing and exporting these technologies. I am pleased that the manager's amendment includes many of the issues raised by my Republican colleagues during the CTCP markup on June 16th. I urge support for H.R. 5156 and the other bills being considered today, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership and for holding today's markup, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Mr. Williams is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't take the full 3 minutes. One of the bills we're going to be marking up today is one that deals with the outgrowth of a bad economy, when people start seeing TV commercials saying, take the gold between that you've got in your dresser drawer, cash it in for money. The problem is a lot of those companies we're learning are ripping off consumers, and they're doing it in 2 ways that we're going to prevent with legislation we're going to be marking up today. One is that we're going to say that if someone sends in their gold to one of these operators like Cash for Gold, it can't be melted down, no transaction can be completed until the customer says, okay, I'm interested. And no, we're not going to have a time period that is going to click and automatically the transaction has been consummated. And also we're going to do something else. We're going to say that if the consumer insures the package being sent to these gold dealers at a certain amount, meaning their judgment of what it's worth, it has to be insured when it's mailed back if the relationship is not consummated, if the transaction doesn't happen, at the same amount. And the reason is, according to the hearing that we had and testimony from the Postal Service, a lot of this gold mysteriously disappears when these gold dealers get it. And over 1,000 complaints have come in. The Postal Service has determined that, in fact, these dealers very often don't even send the gold back at all. We are going to be marking up legislation that has bipartisan support that is going to deal with that, and I thank the chairman and the subcommittee and the members of the subcommittee for moving on this so expeditiously, and I yield back.
Is there any other member of the subcommittee who wishes to be heard who have not been heard? That said, we'll move on to consider the bill. The chair now calls up H.R. 4501, the Guarantee of a Legitimate Deal Act of 2010. The clerk will report the title of the measure.
H.R. 4501, a bill to require certain return policy from businesses that purchase precious metals from consumers and solicit such transactions through an internet website.
Without objection, the bill will be considered as read and open to amendment at any point in time. The chair now recognizes himself to offer a manager's amendment in the form of an amendment in the nature of a substitute. The manager's amendment to H.R. 4501 makes a number of substantive and technical changes that strengthen the legislation consumer protections. The amendment clarifies that it is unlawful to transfer jewelry before all right, we're ahead of myself. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 4501 offered by Mr. Rush of Illinois. Strike all after the
Without
enactment.
objection, the manager's amendment will be considered as read. The chair now recognizes himself for 5 minutes to speak on the manager's amendment. As I said before, the manager's amendment to H.R. 4501 makes a number of substantive and technical changes that strengthens the legislation's consumer protection. The amendment clarifies that it is unlawful to transfer jewelry before the consumer explicitly agrees to offer an offer from a purchaser. This will ensure that consumer's jury will be neither melted down nor transferred to a third party before a deal is finalized. The amendment provides an exception to this requirement for law enforcement agencies and their personnel. The amendment defines, quote, purchases of precious metals, end quote, without reference to the Internet, eliminating a loophole that could have allowed companies that did not use online advertising to escape the requirements of the legislation. The amendment strengthens the requirement for ensuring shipments return to consumers by requiring companies to insure those shipments at the level the consumer insured the inbound package if the consumer provides proof of insurance. Finally, the amendment establishes that the Act's provision will take effect 60 days after enactment and provides the Federal Trade Commission with discretionary rulemaking authority to carry out the purposes of this Act. This amendment is a product of bipartisan work, and I would like to thank Mr. Weiner, Mr. Whitfield, Mr. Barton, and their staffs for their constructive collaboration. I understand that there are still concerns regarding one provision of the legislation, and I look forward to working with my friends on the other side of the aisle to address them as we move towards full committee markup. And I urge my colleagues to support the manager's amendment. Does any member seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, may I just ask one question of the council? I was just curious, since this legislation would designate a violation of this act as an unfair and deceptive practice, I was just curious, what is the penalty for perpetrating an unfair and deceptive act?
There is a civil penalty under the FTC Act. I believe it is $16,000 per violation, but I do not. Let me grab that real quick.
Is that the maximum, $16,000 per?
It's $10,000 per violation, but I believe that's in the FTC Act. It has gone up since then. I don't know the specifics.
So there are only civil penalties?
There's only civil penalties. That's correct.
Thank you.
Madam Counsel, is that up to $16,000?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Up to, all right. Is there any other members seek recognition? Without objection, we'll take the vote on the amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, the ayes have it. The manager's amendment is adopted. The next amendment that we will call up we now move that the subcommittee will adopt Subcommittee on Commerce, Trade, Consumer Protection forward H.R. 4501, the Guarantee of a Legitimate Deal Act, as amended to the full committee with the recommendation that the bill passes. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the H.R. 4501, the Guarantee of a Legitimate Deal Act, as amended, is favorably forward to the full committee. The next bill that we will consider is H.R. 2480, the Truth in Fur Labeling Act. The clerk will report the title of the measure.
H.R. 2480. This act may be cited as the Truth in Fur Labeling Act of 2009.
Without objection, the bill will be considered as read and open to amendment at any point. The chair now recognizes himself to offer a manager's amendment to the bill under consideration. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to H.R. 2480 offered by Mr. Rush of Illinois. Page 1, line 5, strike 2009 and insert 2010, strike section 4.
Without objection, the manager's amendment will be considered as read. The chair recognizes himself for 5 minutes to speak on the manager's amendment. The manager's amendment to H.R. 2480 makes one simple change to the bill. It strikes Section 4 of the legislation, which addresses preemption of state laws. The manager's amendment reflects the consensus shared by animal rights advocates, the fur industry, and members from both sides of the aisle that it is best for this bill to remain silent on preemption. This is clearly the best way to move forward with this bipartisan legislation, and I urge members to support it. Does any member seek recognition to speak on the manager's amendment? If not, there being no further discussion, the question occurs on the manager's amendment. All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Are there any other amendments? I now move that the subcommittee will. I now move that the subcommittee forward H.R. 2480, the Truth and Fur Labeling Act, as amended, to the full committee with the recommendation that the bill pass. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and H.R. 2480, the Truth and Fur Labeling Act, as amended, is favorably forwarded to the full committee. The chair now calls up H.R. 5156, the Clean Energy Technology Manufacturing and Export Assistance Act. The clerk will report the title of the measure.
H.R. 5156, a bill to provide for the establishment of a Clean Energy Technology Manufacturing and Export Assistance Fund to assist United States businesses with exporting clean energy technology products and services.
Without objection, the bill will be considered as read and open to amendment at any point. The chair now recognizes himself to offer a manager's amendment in the form of an amendment in the nature of a substitute. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 5156 offered by Mr. Rush of Illinois. Strike all after the enacting clause and insert the following. Section 1, short title.
The amendment will be considered as read. The chair recognizes himself for 5 minutes to discuss the manager's amendment. This manager's amendment makes several changes to strengthen the bill and clarify its goals. The amendment substitutes a different definition of, quote, clean energy technology, end of quote. The definition included here comes from the American Clean Energy and Security Act of 2009, which passed the House last year. Specifically, this definition comes from an amendment offered by my good friend Mr. Dingell in the full committee. His amendment passed with strong bipartisan support, and I would expect that definition will have strong support today. This amendment further emphasizes how strengthening our clean energy technology industry will help small businesses and lead to more jobs in the U.S. This is accomplished by several additions to existing provisions. An explicit reference to domestic job creation in the subsection creating the fund, a direction to the Secretary to act consistent with the National Export Initiative, which focuses on job creation and recognizes the importance of export assistance for small and medium-sized businesses, and more details regarding job creation in the Secretary's report in 2015. That last addition incorporates ideas from our hearing on the concept of an employment impact statement, which is something in which Ranking Member Whitfield has expressed an interest. There's also a new report that the Secretary must make within 6 months of enactment, indicating how the Secretary will focus on small and medium-sized businesses, job creation, and domestic production. Finally, this amendment addresses my colleagues' concerns over a possible grant-making aspect of the bill. I have included a provision in clarifying the bill's original intent that the assistance provided using appropriated funds is not meant to be provided as grants. This amendment takes into account the concerns that have been expressed by my Republican colleagues both during our previous hearings and in subsequent hearings. We've tried to accommodate their concerns and improve this legislation. I hope all of the committee members will join me in supporting this manager's amendment and passing this bill. Is there any other member who seeks recognition to speak on the manager's amendment? If not, there being no further discussion, the question is on the amendment is on the manager's amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Does any other member seek recognition on the bill as amended? If not, there being no further discussion, the question now occurs on the bill. I now move that the Subcommittee on Commerce, Trade, and Consumer Protection forward H.R. 5156, the Clean Energy Technology, Manufacturing, and Export Assistance Act, as amended to the full committee with the recommendation that the bill pass. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The opinion of the chair's ayes have it, and H.R. 5156 is adopted as amended and is favorably forward to the full committee. The chair now calls up H.R. 1796, the Residential Carbon Monoxide Poisoning Prevention Act. The clerk will report the title of the measure.
H.R. 1796. This act may be cited as the Residential Carbon Monoxide Poisoning Prevention Act.
Without objection, the bill will be considered as read and open to amendment at any point. The chair recognizes himself now to offer a manager's amendment in the form of an amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 1796 offered by Mr. Rush. Strike all after the enacting clause and insert the following.
The amendment will be considered as read. The manager's amendment I am offering makes substantive and technical changes to the legislation. The purpose of this amendment is to strengthen the provisions of this bill aimed at reducing incidents of carbon monoxide poisoning. The amendment requires the Consumer Product Safety Commission to adopt most of the existing voluntary industry standards that apply to different types of carbon monoxide alarms as mandatory consumer product safety standards. The amendment also allows the mandatory standards to be automatically updated when the relevant consistent standards setting group revises the standards. But it also makes clear that the Commission can still initiate its own rulemaking to improve on the standards as necessary to ensure the safety and effectiveness of said alarms. In addition, the amendment requires the introduced bill's requirement that portable generator warning labels include certain design elements specified in the bill. The amendment instead calls on the CPSC to study the possibility of requiring the warning labels to include other languages in addition to English. Finally, the amendment strengthens the eligibility criteria for the grant program to encourage states to adopt laws that require the installation of carbon monoxide alarms in a broader range of homes. It also expands the allowable uses of the grant funds to include the purchase of the alarms for certain vulnerable populations. Carbon monoxide poisoning is a serious problem, and we should encourage the states and local governments to do all they can to prevent injuries and deaths from this lethal substance. I commend Mr. Matheson for introducing this bill, and I urge my colleagues to support the manager's amendment and support the passage of the act. Does any member seek recognition to speak on the manager's amendment? The question now occurs on the passage of the manager's amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The question now occurs on the passage of the bill All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is forwarded to the full committee for adoption. Where's the next bill? The chair now calls up the Foreign Manufacturers Legal Accountability Act of 2010. The clerk will report the title of the measure.
H.R. 4678. This act may be cited as the Foreign Manufacturers Legal Accountability Act of 2010.
Without objection, the bill will be considered as read and open to amendment at any point. The chair now recognizes himself to offer manager's amendment in the form of an amendment in the nature of a substitute. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 4678 offered by Mr. Rush of Illinois. Strike all after the enacting clause and insert the following.
Without objection, the manager's amendment will be considered as read. The chair now recognizes himself for 5 minutes to speak on the manager's amendment. The manager's amendment I am offering makes several substantive and technical changes to this legislation. And I want to take the time out to commend Ms. Sutton, Mr. Turner, her lead Republican co-sponsor on this measure, for the work that they have put into trying to refine this bill. First, the amendment limits the breadth of the jurisdiction to which foreign manufacturers consent by making clear that it does not include wholly foreign law suits. A foreign plaintiff suing a foreign manufacturer for injuries occurring outside the U.S. cannot sue in U.S. courts under this bill. The amendment includes the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration among the agencies that must require foreign manufacturers to meet the requirements of this bill. This puts the CPSC, the FDA, the EPA, and NHTSA agencies with authority over products that could injure consumers on the same footing with respect to what is required of foreign manufacturers of products within their authority. The amendment provides additional guidance to applicable agencies on setting triggers that will bring foreign manufacturers within the reach of this bill. Among the factors that agency must at a minimum consider are the value and quantity of the imported products from the manufacturer and the frequency of importation from the manufacturer. In addition, the amendment sets certain minimal requirements to be eligible to serve as the registered agent for a foreign manufacturer and sets certain minimal requirements for documenting the designation of a registered agent. The amendment calls on all agencies with responsibilities under this bill to cooperate with each other to establish a consistent regulatory pattern to carry out the purposes of the bill in an effective and efficient manner. It also extends the time frame for implementation to 1 year. The amendment also requires foreign manufacturers to report to the applicable agency any safety campaigns or recalls in other countries for products also sold in the United States. Manufacturers within NHTSA's authority are already required to do this, and I think it makes sense to expand this requirement to other products that could pose a danger to America's consumers. Finally, the amendment clarifies the Act's applicability to component part manufacturers. Under the amendment, only foreign manufacturers of component parts that are shipped unassembled to the U.S. are covered by this bill. Component parts that arrive in the U.S. within final assembled products are not covered. Including this latter category of component parts could raise serious implementation concerns, so we don't cover them here. However, the amendment also provides for a study to examine whether it would be feasible and advisable to do this. We don't know what the answer would be from this study, but I think it is worthwhile to thoroughly examine this possibility before concluding whether we can or cannot do this. This is an important bill that has been strengthened and hopefully clarified by said changes. And I urge my colleagues to support the manager's amendment and support passage of this act. Does any other member seek recognition to offer an amendment to the manager's amendment? The question is on the amendment by the amendment to the manager. The question is on the manager's amendment. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. I now move that the committee forward the Foreign Manufacturers Legal Accountability Act of 2010 as amended to the full committee with the recommendation that the bill passes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the Foreign Manufacturers Legal Accountability Act of 2010 as amended is favorably forward to the full committee. I ask unanimous consent that staff be authorized to make technical and conforming corrections to the measures forwarded at today's markup. Without objection, so ordered. There being no further business before this subcommittee, the meeting of the subcommittee is adjourned. Let me tell you, the next time we have a markup.